cryptocurrencies have turned money into a communications protocol, which makes every communications device a banking system. Not a bank account, a bank. When you have a smartphone with cryptocurrencies in your pocket, you don't have a Swiss bank account in your pocket, as Obama famously said. You are a Swiss banker.
Broadcasting from Brisbane, Australia, this is the FOMO Show.
I'm Matt.
And I'm Joe.
And this is a fortnightly podcast where we talk about the exciting ideas changing the world today and what might change the world tomorrow.
We'll help you stay across what's going on so you don't get the fear of missing out.
You can find us at FOMO.show or by searching for the FOMO Show on your platform of choice.
Everything in the show is in the show notes. You can find links to the stuff we're talking about and timestamps to the relevant parts, so you can always skip ahead or find it later.
So this episode, we are covering a bunch of news from all around the technology world.
We're going to talk about where Bitcoin's at.
Yeah, we are also going to cover Facebook containers in our privacy and security segment.
Facebook containers?
Yeah, it's a nifty little add-on you can get on the Firefox browser. Very good for quarantining Facebook.
Which is exactly where it should be.
Stop it getting all up in your business. So what have you been up to the last couple of weeks, mate?
So I have been binging Andreas Antonopoulis, the Bitcoin speaker, delivers these incredible talks. I'd heard his name for years and I'd seen bits and pieces, but I'd never really fully given him the time of day.
Yep.
And then I jumped in.
Yep.
And it was great.
It's brilliant. He's one of the guys that I first looked up on YouTube videos when I got into Bitcoin. And there's these videos, I don't know what you came across when you looked, but there's like videos of him from like 2012, 2013, talking to classes or rooms of people at meetups, and there's only like 2 or 3 people in the room, and he's just like evangelizing Bitcoin and crypto and the power of it all. And he's been just a big fountain of knowledge for so long.
Yeah, so I'm actually really keen on getting his book on the technical, what was it, Mastering Bitcoin or something?
Bitcoin.
All on the technical underpinnings of it, which sounds really cool.
So what were some of the videos that you watched from him then?
Oh, I watched his introduction to Bitcoin because I figured, it's always nice watching what people's introductions are. I've watched some of his Bitcoin 5 years on sort of stuff, a few different compilations of things, a few other random bits and pieces, but he's got such a brilliant way of because he talks about it on so many different levels, whether it's on, the government control of finance, which is something that is quite dear to many people's hearts who are in the cryptocurrency community. And just the way he ties that all back in, and he sort of weaves a thread where he's talking about, how many people do you know who go around on horses as their primary mean of transport? And he says that's exactly the same as what was going to happen with credit cards. Yeah. I mean, it's like when you're in a shop and you're queuing up, and then the person at the front of the queue takes out a checkbook, and everyone in the queue just suddenly sighs and like, ugh. He said that's going to be the people with credit cards in the future, which is so interesting. And just talking about, just brilliant.
That's great.
A few different ones.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, we're going to discuss Bitcoin in a lot more depth, where things are at and where things are going with it later in the episode. So we'll dig more into that when we get there.
I've been to a few meetups as well, which we'll cover later. And I'm still waiting for internet. It's been 4 weeks, and it'll be within 24 to 48 hours. I will have internet.
It's perpetually been 24 to 48 hours.
Look, 24 to 48 hours is it's hope.
It's the new 4 weeks.
What about yourself?
Yeah, I've been waiting for you to get internet as well, Joe. It's funny, we did the Star Citizen episode and Joe got really, really excited and ready to install, and then you just haven't been able to play because you haven't had any internet, and I haven't been able to play with you. So Yeah, apart from waiting for you to get internet, I also went to a meetup, which we'll talk about later. And I've really just been doing a lot of legal work recently. We're into the year now, and there's a lot of different things going on. It's been some interesting stuff. I'm doing
Anything you can talk about?
Not in a lot of specifics, but I am doing some work in the security token space, which is... yeah, very interesting. There's a lot of unique regulatory issues in that space and a lot of things that just haven't really been contemplated by many people before. But yeah, incredibly interesting. And I'm enjoying that, and yeah, been a few other things going on, but yeah, that's basically been my life last couple of weeks. Just a lot of legal work.
We'll have to pick your brains on some of that down the track.
Yeah, I'll probably run at least one meetup here in Brisbane on the security token stuff.
Cool.
So if you are in Brisbane, you can look forward to that with the Blockchain for Business meetup. Otherwise, yeah, I'm sure we'll discuss it here on the podcast too.
Awesome.
Cool.
Let's get into it. This podcast is not investment or any other type of advice. We're not saying you should buy anything at all.
Yeah, so full disclosure, we're both personally invested in different shares, funds, and cryptocurrencies, some of which we do talk about on this show. But if we talk about any type of investment product, it doesn't mean you should buy it.
So do your research, never invest more than you can afford to lose, and avoid the fear of missing out.
If you're new around here and new to blockchain and cryptocurrency, you can check out our Blockchain Basics series. It starts from episode 2 and continues on until around about episode 8.
It gives you some of the fundamentals, a bit of grounding, and helps you understand what on earth we're talking about.
All right, let's get into the news. So first bit of news, Visa and Mastercard are planning now to increase transaction fees, while cryptocurrency, it just seems that they're getting lower and lower.
Yeah, so they're putting their transaction fees up for US merchants who accept card payments. Interestingly, in Q4 of 2018, Visa's profits rose to 2.85 billion and Mastercard's to 1.9 billion, which is interesting because both of them increased their profits by 33% compared to the same time the previous year.
That's a really significant rise too, especially with consideration to all the challenges that are popping up. It almost seems counterintuitive if you've we've got Pay ID here in Australia now, which is one thing, and there's a number of other methods of interfacing with the banks that don't involve Visa and Mastercard. But yeah, there's also crypto, obviously, and the merchant fees are generally a lot lower for that stuff, even with the point of sale software than Visa and Mastercard. So it seems a little bit counterintuitive. Yeah, with the crypto, merchants can take payments directly into some type of account, which is theirs, without anyone tacking anything on. If they really want to, they just got to put up a QR code, someone scans it, away you go. So yeah, interesting. Maybe we'll look back on that in 5 and 10 years and say that's when merchants really began getting fed up with Visa and look for something else. But we'll see. So next bit of news, and this is I don't know how to react to this one. JP Morgan, Jamie Dimon, who is the founder of JP Morgan, famously said a couple of years ago that he thought Bitcoin was a scam. They have now made their own cryptocurrency.
Yeah. So going into the MIT Technology Review, they were saying that the bank intends to use the new coin to settle payments between big institutions, and it will be redeemable 1-to-1 for US dollars. JPM coin will be issued on their own private blockchain.
Yeah, the bank intends to use the new coin to settle payments between big institutions and will be redeemable at a 1-to-1 peg to US dollars.
The computers that validate the transactions have to have permission to use the network.
So the JPM coin is using essentially a private version of Ethereum called Quorum, which JP Morgan have built and they've been using for a fair while now, and they've been trying to convince other companies and banks to get on their Quorum framework. But it'll be a permission ledger. They will call the shots. They'll have complete control over it. It's essentially just a ledger, another ledger for the bank with a little bit of extra functionality.
Yeah, so CCN were pretty critical. They said, someone please let Jamie Dimon know that his new cryptocurrency is a fraud. They said all that's happening with JPM coin is a client gives JP Morgan $1 and JPM's computer remembers it gave them $1 and that they're obligated to give it back when the customer wants to withdraw it, which is exactly how it works right now before this even happened. Clients are given money and they give it back when they ask for it. It's just called banking.
Yeah, so I don't really know what they're proposing the use for this is. Look, the one use I could see for it is for companies using the Quorum platform. It may be an easy way for them to delineate their smart contracts and have money changing hands between businesses in a form that's comfortable for those businesses, because they could say, look, it's pegged to US dollar 1-to-1, we'll back it. But at that point, you've got to ask, well, why do you even need to use that system at all? If it's a private ledger, JP Morgan control it, you're still entering and exiting through them. What's the point?
JPM,
Really?
the trusted name in cryptocurrency. And yeah, CCN played this.
Listen up. Come to the center of the room, please. This is a Schrute buck. When you have done something good, you will receive 1 Schrute buck. 1,000 Schrute bucks equals an extra 5 minutes for lunch.
What is the cash value of a Schrute buck?
Excellent question, Pam. 1/100th of a cent.
So 10,000 of your dollars is worth $1 real dollar?
Just zip your lid.
Oh, I loved what.
Next up, a major Philippine bank just put a computer screen into a bank and called it a crypto ATM.
Yeah, so this comes out of CCN as well. And according to local publications, the Union Bank of the Philippines, one of the largest commercial banks in the Philippines, has launched what they are calling the country's first crypto ATM. And there's a picture.
Just says crypto ATM coming soon.
Yeah, and it just looks like a little platform with a screen on it.
Yeah, but to be fair, Union Bank CEO Edwin Bautista is well recognized for his enthusiasm towards crypto, according to the article. Yeah, he showcased a GPU-based Bitcoin mining kit at the Business World Economic Forum in 2018. So, yeah, apparently they've been messing around with it, and here we are.
Yeah, and I guess as long as it's offering real crypto and not some kind of bank-backed digital currency like we keep seeing out of many of these banks now, then it's probably okay. It's probably actually really good that a bank is saying, come here to buy your Bitcoin. I'm all aboard that. If banks started doing that here in Australia, I reckon that'd be a really good step. As long as it's just that. Just buying Bitcoin.
And JPM coin.
Next bit of news. Major automotive companies have been talking about blockchain standardization.
So car manufacturing giants like BMW, GM and Ford have come together to discuss standardization measures in the car industry. So yeah, it was at some event in Europe somewhere. But yeah, pretty interesting sign. Standardization is pretty important because it means you're not having Hyundais on Hyundai blockchain and Fiat on the Fiat blockchain, which shuts down to sleep in the afternoon because it's having a siesta. I got a real interest in watching what comes out of this. So what conclusions they draw about what kind of platforms they should consider running on, what they're actually wanting to achieve with this stuff, because it's weird hearing car manufacturers talk about this stuff because you're kind of wondering, well, what are you going to do on the blockchain if you're a car manufacturer? So I'm really interested to see what comes out of that because I like just sitting here, I can't really think of many uses for them currently. So you could have like a register of the owner.
That's
so like
very
a
true.
ownership registry, maybe a service log, service registry, something like that. That would be kind of interesting. But yeah, when the oil was last filled up and things like that.
Yeah, I guess definitely the VIN and the identification and that kind of stuff. If there was a centralized registry on a decentralized network like a blockchain, yeah, that could be really useful as like a common source of truth.
As long as they don't have a common source of truth for when you were speeding.
Yes. Well, that's coming.
Mate, a couple bits of virtual / augmented reality / virtual world sort of pieces of news. First up, live concert inside the Fortnite game drew more viewers than Woodstock, the Isn't that a famous music festival?
Yeah, Woodstock's the one that I think it started in like the 60s and everyone still goes to it. But yeah, this is out of futurism.com, and they said the wildly popular video game Fortnite made history on the 2nd of February with a live show by EDM artist Marshmello that reportedly drew millions of viewers, which, for context, would be 25 times as many people who attended Woodstock in 1969.
Yeah, so according to a tweet from Jeff Keighley, far from alone, sources are telling him that there were more than 10 million concurrent players watching the concert, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, and this all happened inside the game, which is just, I guess, another step for these kind of blended reality VR events. I didn't even know Fortnite had the capability of doing this. Yeah. So it's pretty cool just even seeing that, but they've built that inside the game world, and 10 million people logged into the game and essentially played the game to watch this, let alone all the people that were watching the streams online. So yeah, what more can you say? I guess that's the world we live in. And what I'd be really interested to consider is, you know, what other bands begin looking at this as a viable way to run their concerts. Because at the moment, there are so many costs associated with touring. And we feel it particularly here in Australia, and me as someone who's been into a lot of smaller bands that are generally from the States or Europe, sometimes you have to wait 10 years between tours. Sometimes they don't even come. You know, there's one band that quite famously never came to Australia that I was into because it was too far and they had a phobia about flying. And so the furthest they go would be Europe. There's always been a big problem living here in Australia and having bands come over and tour. But if I'm a band and I'm looking at this and I'm seeing 10 million people log into a game to watch a band play, and ostensibly it sounds like it was pretty exciting too. It sounds like everyone enjoyed it, got a decent experience out of it. Well, I'm looking at that and I'm going, well, maybe we could tour Australia, but tour it in VR, you know, like hold a VR event and just say to people, well, it's not even VR, I guess, so you can look at it from your computer screen. But as this technology evolves and people are able to put on goggles to watch this stuff, it may actually feel like they're almost there. And if the sound's good enough,
it's going to be insane. So you could almost imagine in Los Angeles, for example, they could set up a studio, just like a green screen room with a bunch of different cameras that are automated.
Yep.
You get your bands in there and their sound stuff, and they stream around the world. You got your phone, you just move your phone around and you'll be able to look around, or you could have your own little character in 3D space, same on your computer. That would be wild.
Yeah. I mean, look, it won't be the exact same experience as live. You know, you can't touch them physically. They can't see you. But it could be close enough, especially if you've got a decent set of speakers. But there are some benefits too. First of all, you're not standing in a sweaty mosh pit with a bunch of other people you don't know, kind of getting all their sweat and smells all over you. You're not having to stand there for hours waiting for the opening act with nothing else to do. You don't have to... I've been at gigs before where I've been right up near the speaker and you come away and you can't hear out of one ear for like a few days because it was that noisy.
Wow.
You can control that stuff in your own environment. You know, you don't have to... You're in your own house. You got your own speaker system. You're watching it. You could maybe watch a replay instead of watching it live if you really wanted to. There's a lot of benefits. And yeah, I get that we get some of that experience with being able to watch DVDs and watch concerts on TV or whatever. But this is the next step, this VR experience where you can kind of be fully immersed and suspend enough reality that you almost feel like you're there.
Wow. Because they could even, pick up your microphone so you could chat to the person who's standing next to you virtually.
Yeah.
And then together, all of the little noises from everyone adds up to a bigger crowd.
Yeah.
So it could be kind of random. That would be weird.
And you think about it too, like a band they could sell tickets. They could still sell tickets if they wanted to. But the amount of money that bands spend on venue hire and travel and all those other costs, they could sell tickets for a lot less than what it costs to go to a normal gig and probably make more from it as well. Not to mention the different ways that they could advertise things and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I think that's a really underexplored area that's I can guarantee you after this is going to get explored a lot more often. And hopefully it means that, bands can become more accessible to the rest of the world.
I mean, I don't want to dwell on this story too long,
Yeah.
but you're thinking a lot of the people playing this are kids, young kids who were born after 2000.
Yeah.
And this is the norm for them.
Yeah.
So it's not the norm for us, but it's the norm for them.
Yeah.
They're never going to live in a... It's like Andreas Antonopoulis. He keeps going back. He goes, they're never going to live in a world where there wasn't cryptocurrency or there wasn't VR.
Yep.
Wild.
Well, I saw a video just recently of a girl, I think she was in an Asian country, and she just had a smartwatch on her wrist, and the store attendant was like, okay, this is how much it costs. And she literally just pressed the button on her smartwatch, held it up, the store attendant scanned the watch, and off she went.
Wow.
Just big tick popped up, and off she went. It was a crypto exchange, I'm pretty sure. But for her, because that's the thing, like everything we do is so coloured by how we've grown up and what we know, and that's our context. For those younger kids growing up, that's the norm. That's their context. The idea of even valuing a piece of paper that's got a number on it or some writing on it just would, to them, will seem so foreign.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Absolutely crazy. Google Maps, their augmented reality navigation is rolling out to a handful of users. So if you are a local guide, which is the people who give loads of reviews on Google Maps, you're actually going to get beta access to the walking focused augmented reality navigation. So you can see an example picture on the article, which is in Engadget, and it shows a map, and it shows overlaid on your screen, it shows what is in front of you in little arrows superimposed over the street. So that was the original vision of Google Glass, and it's slowly happening. They said it will need more testing, but yeah.
It looks really cool.
So I guess you point your phone, and it will sort of superimpose arrows over your camera feed, showing which way you need to go.
Yeah, it looks really cool. So I mean, yeah, there's times when you're trying to work out exactly where it's trying to take you on Google Maps sometimes, and this will probably help, I guess. And yeah, I guess if you're in a big tour group too, you could possibly sync everyone up and say, okay, this is where we're going. If you get lost, just use your Google AR to get there. We'll all meet there.
And don't forget, in all of these cars, so like Google Auto or whatever it is, Android Auto, so you're going to have it projected onto windscreens in no time.
Yep.
How cool.
Yep. And you know what's going to come with that? Advertising.
You are starting to think like a marketer.
Especially when you look at, I don't know if you've seen, but there's all these new bits of software and algorithms that can work out. Let's say you tell it to project a certain advertisement only on these types of spaces. So if it detects like a white space somewhere, like a white wall, you could say only project these things on surfaces that don't mean anything else to the driver. And that's like able to be done now.
Great to see that.
This will just be the tip of the iceberg for what they want to do with this.
So next piece of news, forget everything you know about 3D printing. The Replicator is here.
So we've just watched the video, which we'll put up in the show notes for this thing, and I really recommend you go and watch this video because it probably tells you a lot more than we could just on the audio format, and you'll probably be similarly amazed when you watch the video, just like we were. But yeah, this is a project out of researchers in California, and it's a 3D printer that creates an entire object at once rather than building it layer by layer as typical additive manufacturing devices do, which really brings a lot of what we read in science fiction about 3D printing one step closer to reality. Yeah,
so essentially they take a computer model of a 3D object, they calculate what it looks like from all sides, and they get 2D images from each angle, so it's 360 degrees as 2D images. And then they put that in a projector. And then what happens is the projector casts those images onto a cylindrical container full of this resin, which solidifies under certain intensities of light. This projector cycles through the images. The cylinder rotates each little bit, And then after a certain amount of light hits, the resin solidifies, goes under polymerisation and turns into solid plastic. And then you pour away the rest of the liquid and you've got an object behind.
Yeah, so if you watch the video, it shows this in action, and it really is just like a projector, like what we project images onto with a screen and put our PowerPoint slides up with. They literally take a projector like that and get it to project this 3D image into just a tube of this yellowy, goldy resin. And over time, that becomes the 3D printed model that they want, and everything else can just fall away. It's incredible when you watch it.
So they did an example of the thinking man, sort of that statue of the guy with his head in his hand. But yeah, it allows you, the article says, to create objects that enclose existing ones. So, for example, a screwdriver handle around another piece of metal, or and they suggest it would be good for medical devices and things like, replicated jaws and things like that.
Yeah. So they're only doing it on centimeter scale at the moment, so it's not doing it in a particularly big way, and they're not that exact, but they've just started doing it. So I reckon the technology is just going to evolve as time goes on. And yeah, it's really interesting from a 3D printing perspective, because I remember like 15 years ago, mate, I was looking into 3D printing and thinking it was going to be the next big thing.
Yeah.
I was like, this is going to be it. It's going to be a huge industry. And give it 15 years, no one's going to be making anything anymore. And in the traditional way, everyone's just going to be 3D printing everything.
We're waiting.
Yeah, it just hasn't. And I think part of it's because we haven't really found a material that can be all-purpose enough for the needs of the printers. Like, you get ink cartridges for your current printers, and you get different types of ink cartridges, but that's about all you need. Like, with those 3 different colors and a black, you can make pretty much anything you want. But we don't have the equivalent to that in real life, at least not on a commercial scale, because we don't really have a material that we can feed into it that can be repurposed and atoms can be shifted around, or if we do, it's just not really there yet. I think once we get that, or once we get something that can work in a different way, like what we're seeing here, we're a step closer to having like a printing store where you print a surfboard or something.
I'm so ready.
Yeah, I've seen it called base in some sci-fi novels. Like there's different names for it, but one of the ones I read, which I think was by Peter F. Hamilton, they had wormholes set up on different planets, and all they would do to go to new places would be literally take a 3D printer with this base material, and it could basically manufacture anything they needed out of that base material. Yeah, like foam for a surfboard or rubber for a whatever. It's all really just shifting molecules and atoms around, isn't it? Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah, so we're not there yet. Maybe one day.
Oh, a little update. I think we mentioned it a couple of episodes ago. Google said that they were going to bring in some code to Chrome that would have crippled ad blockers and caused the end of the world as we know it. They've actually backtracked on that. So, update to that.
Yeah, and in another bit of news from the security and privacy sector, the Swiss government has invited hackers to penetration test their voting system.
So if you didn't know, penetration testing is hacking, basically. But yeah, the public intrusion test will run from February the 25th until March the 2nd, and it'll offer cash rewards depending on what hackers are able to do. So there are a set of rules attached to it, which sets out the basics and the qualifying vulnerabilities. And yeah, the rewards go from $100 to $30,000.
Yeah, so anyone wanting to participate in the test has to register in advance of the session, and that'll give participants legal permission to attack the system and enables them to receive rewards as opposed to attacking the system and being guilty of a crime.
So yeah, I think they said they were weakening some of the regular defenses that they'd have in place,
right?
So that people could go and attack the core system.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty interesting.
It's just great to see that at least some people are recognizing the value of having, like, employing the hacking community in a positive way, because the hacking community, really, they're just guns for hire. Like, a lot of them, these guys that aren't your traditional white hat hackers who do the right thing all the time, they'll just do whatever's the most profitable to them. So if you can create some monetary rewards for them to compromise your system and help you improve your security, they'll generally do it. Because it's just game theory, really. Like, as long as the incentives are there. So it's just refreshing to see that a government is embracing this and saying, hey, attack our system. Like, we want you to attack it so we can make it stronger.
Next one, in Putin's Russia, internet logs off you.
Oh, yes. So Russia has announced plans to cut itself off from the global internet.
Sometime before April, the Russian government is going to briefly disconnect the whole country from the internet.
Yeah, so the brief shutdown is part of an ongoing effort to bolster Russia's cybersecurity, ostensibly, from foreign attacks. The upcoming shutdown will test just how resilient their local networks are and how much internet traffic can slip through the cracks and outside into the wider internet.
So, and the law will actually also direct Russian internet providers to direct all traffic through government-approved servers, so that they can further enforce content bans, according to ZNet.
Yeah, so it seems like Russia are saying that we can't control our internet here. There's too many ways out. So we're going to take it offline. All the ISPs are now going to have to route through one of our approved servers or connections to the outside world. So when they turn it back on, everyone's traffic in Russia should, they hope, be running through government-approved servers or access points.
So there are two sides to this. Pav jumped into our group. He mentioned this. Yeah, KGB internet, not a great idea, and I think not many people would disagree with you on that. Pretty horrible thing to do. Yeah,
well, it just means that Russia's government will essentially hold the keys to the entire internet for the entire country, and they'll be able to turn it off at will. They'll be able to monitor everything. Yeah, it's not a good look. At the same time, to play devil's advocate, I think it was on our chat as well on the FOMO Show Telegram.
Yeah, so one of the network specialists at the company I work for, he was saying that it's quite a clever move in some ways, because if, for example, Russia's enemies cut off the internet to Russia, phone systems, the financial systems, all of this goes, and then they're toast.
Yep.
I mean, you cut the internet, you're toast.
Yeah.
So he said that by bringing all of this stuff in-house, your own internal sort of financial system, things like that, you're actually really sort of making yourself a lot more secure from those attacks. So yeah, they're getting two birds with one stone here, securing themselves and invading the privacy of all their citizens. So yeah, good on you, you dogs.
In Putin's Russia, internet logs off.
And to be fair, it doesn't seem like we're that far off being here,
no.
if we're not already, because I mean it all runs through ISPs who are government controlled.
Exactly, and yeah, if you look at, I mean, we talked about the AA bill last year, earlier this year.
Yep.
If you look at that, if you look at our Telecommunications
Great episode.
Act,
which episode was that?
That was episode 34. Episode 34.
Episode 34, really cool. Like, Matt went through an amazing rundown of this assistance and access bill in Australia, which means stuff to you even if you're not in Australia. So check it out.
Yeah, it's applicable to everyone who uses the internet, basically, in technology. But you look at that bill, and it's in some ways worse than what Russia are doing here. And you look at the Telecommunications Act, and we already kind of do this here in Australia. You're exactly right. So
it's not good for any of the citizens anywhere in the world, really.
No. So hopefully one of these blockchain projects becomes the new protocol upon which at least money sits, and potentially other things as well down the line. Maybe we'll be able to take it back. Stuff like mesh networks too, like the power of mesh networks to connect people without any central point of connection, essentially, is going to be something that's really amazing if we get there. Big difference.
It's kind of like Tor, I guess. It's like network effect to it, sort of.
Yeah, well, and like Bitcoin as well, I guess, too, in a way, because the more nodes, the more resilient the network is. But in that circumstance, how do you, let's say that goes on all around Australia or all around the world, the only way you shut that down is at the points where there's, like maybe one or two connections between a whole group of people. But how do you shut that down in like a city, for example? That becomes really, really hard.
Electromagnetic warfare and the rights to use airwaves.
Because then it becomes like an internet in its own right, doesn't it? Like, and all you need is a few people sharing access to the net on that mesh. And you've got a really resilient network that's very hard to censor.
Isn't that so weird that you have the legal right to use or not use certain wavelengths? What if somebody finds there's something that's like a wavelength, let's call it a surf length.
Yeah.
Will the government instantly be like, we own this, it's illegal?
Yeah.
Huh.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's the issue. Like, radios can only broadcast in certain bands. Yeah, internet, same thing. But, you know, if you've got enough money, like, look at 5G. You know, no one's doing any research into the health issues with that. But
Cut.
It's okay to cook everyone from the inside out. As long as we're getting fast speeds. Bottoms up.
OpenAI, the sort of research group on artificial intelligence, they built a text generator, which was so good, it's considered too dangerous to release.
Yeah, so they've said that their new natural language model, GPT-2, was trained to predict the next word in a sample of 40 gigabytes of internet text. The end result was a system generating text that adapts to the style of and content of the conditioning text, allowing the user to essentially generate, you know, realistic and coherent additions to whatever they're talking about.
So if you're a student at uni, you could, for example, put in your previous few essays.
Yep.
And put, you know, some nonsense about whatever your topic is that you're studying, and it will just flow in your writing style.
Yep. Sound like you come up with concepts that you seem to have come up with in your previous styles. It's a little bit uncanny, but yeah, it wouldn't be plagiarism because it'd be mimicking you. But yeah, the model's a vast improvement on the first version that they did. But with every good application of a system, like, you know, bots capable of dialogue and better speech recognition, the company also found several more that were not so good.
Such as generating fake news, impersonating people, or automating abusive or spam comments on social media.
So when GPT-2 was tasked with writing a response to the prompt, recycling is good for the world, no, you could not be more wrong, the machine spat back the following text.
Recycling is not good for the world. It is bad for the environment, it is bad for our health, and it is bad for our economy. I'm not kidding. Recycling is not good for the environment. It is destructive to the earth, and it is a major contributor to global warming. Recycling is not good for our health. It contributes to obesity and diseases like heart disease and cancer. Recycling is bad for our economy. It increases the cost of a product and, in turn, the price of everything that is made with that product. Recycling is not good for our nation. We pay a tremendous price for the privilege of having the world's most advanced and efficient recycling system. Recycling is a huge, colossal waste of time, energy, money, and resources.
And people are saying that, you know, we should have our parliament make decisions partly based on what AI recommends and predictive voting and all sorts of things.
This is your God.
Yeah. The company that promised a one-way ticket to Mars is bankrupt.
Yeah, so Mars One Ventures, you might remember they were the company that claimed it was going to send hundreds of people to live and die on Mars, and it's now bankrupt. Yeah, so Swish Financial Notices have said that, and yeah, they were known for they asked for submissions of, do you want to go to Mars and die there?
Yeah,
bunch of people applied. I think the person I used to live in a house with back in the UK, he applied.
Really?
Didn't get it, but yeah.
Yeah, I think they were going to send 30 to start with or something, weren't they? Right. Was this the one where there was talks of a reality TV show as well?
Yeah, so they got applications from people all over the world, and they didn't manufacture any hardware for space, but claimed they would fund and purchase it with a reality TV show that would follow the candidates on their way to death. Yeah,
so experts back then even speculated that a mission to Mars could potentially cost hundreds of billions of dollars. And two graduate students from MIT in 2014 created a report looking at the feasibility of the Mars One mission and claimed that the tech just wasn't anywhere near mature enough to work, and it'd require a lot more money than that and deliveries of space spare parts for it to even work. And so Yeah, there was just problem after problem after problem, and it seems that the funding has just run out and they've declared bankruptcy.
Yeah, well, and following on from this, I mean, speaking of unrealistic promises, Elon Musk has said that a round-trip ticket to Mars will cost just $100,000.
Oh, well, no, that was Elon saying it. So
must be true.
Yeah. Some people have said that it's the Fire Festival Part 2 on Twitter.
Yeah, Elon said it's very dependent on volume, but he's confident, moving to Mars, return ticket is free brackets, will one day cost less than $500,000 and maybe even below $100,000.
Yeah, I mean, it's all relative, isn't it? There would have been one time where a ticket around the world would have cost you a lot more than it does now, especially in the very early days of plane flight or back in the shipping days. I'm sure passage on a ship at one time used to cost a lot of money. It's all relative, I guess, if we get to the point where we have ships going regularly to Mars to and from, and their main task is, hauling cargo, and they've got plenty of room for passengers, it may be foreseeable that tickets don't cost that much.
Yeah. So he then said, there'll be some rapid, unscheduled disassemblies along the way, but excitement is guaranteed.
The thing I like about Elon Musk, though, is he's walking his talk in so many ways, isn't he? Like SpaceX are sending rockets up all the time. They're pushing the boundaries. Sure, there's a couple of failures here and there, but they're, to my mind, the only one that's really trying to push the envelope as quickly as they possibly can. Yeah,
because everyone else is just wanting to just make money and hold on to what they have, and you see what happens when you don't move fast.
Yeah. And there's a lot to be said for having a visionary's approach. I mean, look at Tesla. Everyone wrote Tesla. They still write Tesla off now, but yet they're the biggest electric car manufacturer in the world, selling more and more quarter on quarter. I don't know.
You can write them off, but you can't overtake them.
Yeah. Unless their batteries run out of power. Wherever you're joining us from, it's a real pleasure having you here.
Why not drop into our Telegram channel and say hello? FOMO.show/Telegram.
So in our privacy and security segment this week, we're just going to do a quick one, and I wanted to talk about Facebook containers.
What is a Facebook container exactly?
So a Facebook container is an add-on that's been made by Firefox. So for their browser, the Firefox browser. And what it does is it essentially lets you say that anytime I visit Facebook, I want it to be in its own cordoned off little environment within my browser. So I don't want it to be able to access any other part of my browser. I don't want any of the cookies from it to be able to jump across to follow me around the internet. I just want everything on the Facebook page to stay only on the Facebook page and not to be able to touch anything else. And the reason that's a big deal is because Facebook, when you visit Facebook, it will load your browser with a whole bunch of cookies. And these cookies will then track you around the web, and also track you to other sites you go to, which may support Facebook in the background, and gather as much information as it possibly can on what you're doing on the internet and report that back to Facebook. And Google does a similar thing, but Facebook's is particularly insidious because when you next jump back on the platform, it'll serve you certain ads based on what you're looking at, and it's all being stored and kept by Facebook. So the Facebook container is just a great little tool to make sure that what you do on Facebook stays on Facebook, and it can't watch you as you go around the rest of the web. Now, this isn't on Chrome. There may be a plugin on Chrome for it, but it wouldn't be made by Google. But this is actually really good because it's built into the Firefox browser. It's made by Mozilla. So it's directly supported by the browser that you'll be using. And look, just generally Firefox, I find anyway, gives you a lot more granular control over things like privacy and security. And the main reason that is because it's not made by Google, who are an ad company. And they make their money by collecting and selling your data. So yeah, check it out if you do use Firefox. If you don't, you could do a lot worse than just giving it a try, because I find it's a really good little browser.
Fantastic. We've been to a couple of events this week.
Yes.
So I think it started off, I went to Brendan's Bitcoin meetup, which was, It was a Bitcoin SV meetup, which was the other Wednesday. Really interesting. He gave a really fascinating talk on the history of Bitcoin and sort of more of how Bitcoin SV has been evolving and what the plans are there and things.
So Bitcoin SV is one of the forks of Bitcoin Cash, which is one of the forks of Bitcoin.
Yes, correct. Yeah. So they're all about bigger blocks, scale as far as putting information onto the blockchain. You pay to upload. I think it's like a few dollars for every 100 kilobytes. I think it's like $1 for every 100 kilobytes of data that you put onto the blockchain. So then you can access that from anywhere, which is pretty cool. But so he was talking about the scale and all those sorts of things. Really, really interesting. And then a few days later, I saw there was a Bitcoin meetup in town. So I just said I was going to go along to that. I called you. Are you going to this Bitcoin event? You're like, yeah. So, cool. See you there.
Yeah. And so I made my way inside, and then I was looking for you, and I couldn't see you anywhere. And so I ended up just sitting down because things had already started. And then, did you message me saying? I
messaged you because I was sitting. I kept looking around like, where is Matt? Couldn't see you. And I messaged like, oh, are we at the same event? And you're like, I'm at the
Bitcoin meetup.
I was like, I'm at the Bitcoin Cash meetup.
I thought it was really funny because you said the Bitcoin meetup. You thought you were going to the Bitcoin meetup.
I thought I was,
and then it was a Bitcoin Cash meetup.
Oh, mate. Yeah.
It was just like everything that, there's all the controversy around Roger Ver with Bitcoin.com. Yeah. So it was a hilarious little mix up that kind of showed where we're at in 2019 as far as all the different varieties of Bitcoin.
Well, I went to the wrong Bitcoin event.
But mine was good. Mine was really good. We had so Alex Vetsky, who is the CEO of Amber, which is a turn your spare change into crypto app. He was giving a presentation on the importance of Bitcoin and why Bitcoin in 2019, essentially. And it was a really, really interesting look into the economics behind what came before Bitcoin, particularly the way that we as a human civilization have developed money, changed how money works. And he kind of went through that and then went into why Bitcoin is really our first digital money, like money for the internet, and why it's so important and what it's changed about the way money works, and discussing about inflationary versus deflationary currencies and a whole bunch of different things. And then he also touched on why the blockchain element of Bitcoin is just one part of the cake that makes up Bitcoin. And essentially finished off by saying that in his view, Bitcoin is the most solid foundation for a digital money system, and it makes the most sense that eventually, a lot further down the track, we'll build probably nearly everything we do with some kind of reference to the Bitcoin blockchain, because that'll be the unit that's being exchanged between people. So, really interesting presentation. I think it was filmed. I'm not sure if it's up yet, but if it is up.
I did tweet him asking if it was if he had the video available. He was getting one of his assistants to cut it together and then upload it, so it'll be up at some point.
Yeah, cool.
From the meetups I went to, the Cash and the SV meetup, it was all about scale, and it was all about the things that you could build on top, these being able to do more with scripting and tokens on top of Bitcoin. So where does Bitcoin differ from that? What is there? What are the, because I've seen a bunch of different news on the regular Bitcoin recently, but where's the plan for that?
Look, I think first of all, you got to step back a little bit, and you've got to look at the different ethos of the different projects. And to me, and from what I'm seeing, it seems like the ethos of Bitcoin Core, which is the main Bitcoin, is move slow and don't break things. That seems to be, everything seems to happen very gradually. They take their time with a lot of different things. They test, because the ethos of the Bitcoin main chain is security first and innovation second, essentially. Let's build a really sound foundation of money make sure send, receive, and store works really well. And then, we can start building layer 2s and layer 3s on top of that.
Right. Because with Bitcoin, it's all about, having the chain that has the most proof of work, the machine's working and calculating behind that.
Yep.
That makes it secure.
Yes.
And the more that there is, the more secure it is.
Yeah, exactly. The more proof of work there is, the harder it is for someone to attack the network in the long term. What's happening on the network, particularly this year, is that the Lightning Network has kind of gone from this test, this slow rolling test, because it's been tested now for probably 3 to 4 years. They've been testing Lightning. We think of Lightning and we think it's all pretty new, but it's been tested for quite a long time.
So for newcomers to the space, what is Lightning?
So bidirectional payment channels allow you to do transactions between two parties that are not recorded directly on the Bitcoin blockchain, but essentially mean exchanging promises that have a time dimension, and then setting up this bidirectional payment channel where I say, okay, I'm going to put 10 euros away to communicate with this, let's say it's a bartender at a bar, right? So I'm going to put 10 euros in a multi-sig account, and then we're going to set up a payment channel between us, and we're going to say, okay, I buy one drink, that's, let's say, €1. It's a very cheap drink. And so now I'm going to sign a transaction that says of those 10 euros that we have in a multi-sig together, I'm going to give €1 to you and 9 euros back to me. Now hold on to that transaction because I'm not done drinking. Great. 5 minutes later, I say, that was a lovely drink. I want another one. I'm going to make a new transaction. This one is going to cancel the previous transaction, which we still haven't broadcast. And it's going to say, well, now I'm going to give you 2 euros out of the 10, and I'm going to get a refund of 8. Now hold on to that transaction. It invalidates the previous one. The bartender, if they want to submit it, they get their 2 euros. But when they do that, I also get my 8 euros change. So I'm happy, they're happy. We can both walk away from this transaction anytime we like. And we now have transferred this money, but none of it's yet on the blockchain. Now, this is a really, really good night, so I'm going to have another drink. And now I sign a new transaction that says I'm going to give you 3 euros, you give me 7 back. And we keep going back and forth like this until eventually I say, okay, I want to close my tab. The last transaction we have, maybe for 5 euros in drinks, 5 euros refund, is the transaction that actually gets recorded on the blockchain. So we did 4 transactions, but only 1 to start and 1 to end were recorded on the Bitcoin blockchain. And that's really interesting because in the process of doing that, I could create as many transactions as I wanted, and I could make these as small as I wanted because we're not paying a fee for them. We're only paying a fee for the final balance. So I could be transmitting very, very small amounts in this payment channel. Bidirectional payment channels are really interesting technology. But when it gets even more interesting is when you combine multiple bidirectional payment channels to create a routed network. So I'm sitting there with my friend and I'm having drinks and they're having drinks and we have 2 payment channels to the bar, right? And right now I owe 5 euros to the bar and my friend owes maybe 6 euros to the bar. And we decide to play a game of pool. And so I start a game of pool with my friend and we place a bet. And we say whoever wins, it's 5 euros. We're going to place this side bet on our game of pool. So we start playing pool. Great. And I lose because I suck at pool, right? So I lose badly. My friend might also be a hustler in pool and hiding this, so I lose very badly. Okay, so now I owe my friend 5 euros. Well, I could pay directly and start a new payment channel with my friend, but here's what I could do. I could go to the bar and say, he owes you 5, or let's say he owes you 6, and I owe you 5. How about you change this so that he only owes you 1, and I owe you 10? Great, so now we've got 2 payment channels. I close mine, paying extra to the bartender, and he closes and signs another transaction to pay less for my friend. Essentially, I've paid my friend, but without having any direct connection with them, right? Now, take that and imagine connecting tens of thousands of payment channels together on a network that is routed, where I can basically go out and discover the network and say, that guy, I want to give him 1/10 of a Bitcoin. Now, I'm not connected to that guy, but he's connected to that guy's connected to this guy's connected to that guy, and I am connected to that guy. So I will give you €1, but only if you give it to him, only if he gives it to my final destination. And when the euro arrives at the final destination, you get paid, which then means they get paid, which means they get paid, which means they get paid, which means I paid them, right? And that's Lightning Network in a nutshell, right? Lightning Network is just a series of Bitcoin transactions that we exchange among each other. And here's where it gets funky. Because the really interesting thing about this is that the speed at which I can process these transactions that are fully formed Bitcoin transactions guaranteed by the Bitcoin network. Any one of the parties can walk away at any time. We don't have to trust each other. We can take the last transaction, which is the most valid one. We can submit it to the network and close all the channels anytime we want. So we always have Bitcoin acting as a judge to ensure that all of our transactions we've exchanged are secure. But now we can do them as fast as we can process elliptic curve signatures, as fast as we can process transmitting these payment transactions. And how fast is that? Milliseconds. And we can do them for amounts that are as small as 1 Satoshi. So now I can transmit Satoshis in milliseconds across a network of tens of thousands of participants that are all connected at a layer above Bitcoin.
So it's essentially just like having an extra set of nodes, but it's more directly peer-to-peer, and it's not gumming up the main network.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And yeah, for all intents and purposes, and I know a couple of people who've got what's called Casa nodes now, which are Lightning nodes. They're saying it works really well, and you can get apps on your phone now, which look really nice. But yeah, so that's where the I guess the layer 2 is for Bitcoin. But you've mentioned that Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin SV are also working on some layer 2 stuff, but they are in a way more like a layer 1, I guess, because it sounds like they're building it on chain.
It seems there are two approaches from what I'm understanding with it. So Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin SV, Bitcoin Cash, forked off from Bitcoin, and they bought back in a few of these things called op codes or OP codes, which is additional data that you can attach to your transactions. So now with Bitcoin Cash, they bought back in this OP return.
Yeah.
Or maybe they maybe they didn't bring it back in, but they extended that. So it's actually, you can add characters of text with your transaction. So I think they increased the number that was available, so that you could, for example, put in, if I sent you money, I could say, I could maybe attach a URL of something that you needed to see. You could put information alongside it. Now, Bitcoin SV, having forked to get off Bitcoin Cash, has increased the amount of data that you can put in with a transaction even more, which allows you to do a whole bunch more things. So it seems that both Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin SV, as far as the amount of information that you can include in your transaction, is huge, which actually means that you could potentially run contracts, all kinds of things. I guess it's just an interesting way to use that. Now, I'm not a technical person, but there was both that, and then they were both increasing the block size, so the number of transactions that they could fit into each block, which seems to me to be a pretty smart way of getting around a lot of the network clogging and congestion issues. And whereas Bitcoin Cash is looking at, scale and really tokens, which Bitcoin SV is also looking at, but Bitcoin SV is looking at massive amounts of data being attached to each transaction potentially. So that down the line you could, you put big files on the blockchain and all kinds of things, and you pay to get those files on there immutably. which is it's going to require a lot of storage space in the future.
Yeah, that'll, to my understanding, that will kind of rule out a lot of people from hosting their own nodes.
Correct. Yeah. So it from what I've heard, it's almost like that's the storage side is almost going to be separated in a way,
right,
in future, because there's going to be so much information that's required.
So like a layer 2.
Well, I don't know how you'd call that. I don't know how it works, but they're both pretty fast, just by themselves.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's this. They're now looking at adding tokens on, and even sort of smart contract languages. And they're looking at donation buttons on the internet. You click a button and it just sends money to the person who wrote the article. Or so that's with Bitcoin Cash and SV. And SV is looking at things like embedding games on the blockchain or random bits of text that you can put on the blockchain or code. So it's kind of pretty interesting ways of moving forwards.
When they broke off from Bitcoin, part of my confusion with Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin SV has been that when they broke off from Bitcoin, it was all about keeping Bitcoin Cash. It was like, Bitcoin slowed down, blocks should be bigger.
Yeah.
Like we just need to make it so that transactions can get through. It's cash again.
Yeah.
Because that was the big problem with Bitcoin at the time. I mean, it hasn't been an issue for over a year now.
Yeah.
But at the time, Bitcoin was very congested. And so it's just weird for me hearing now that there's tokens and they're trying to run smart contracts, which like Ethereum, EOS, all of them are having major security issues with running all this stuff on chain, all this extra code on chain, because it drastically increases the threat surface. So that's one big thing I've really struggled with both Cash and SV is that it seems like there's been a very big shift in the direction of the projects. Is that the impression you're getting when you go to these meetups? Like has the vision changed now to be a lot more encompassing?
Well, yeah, it seemed like sort of the cash part was the first part, digital electronic cash, and then it's the features was the next part. Now, whichever way you look at it, it does make sense in a way, because I think once you have the sound money, you want to be able to do things with it and program it and things like that. So you can see that to an extent, but 100%.
Yeah. A lot of it's a ethos and a fundamental difference between the three projects, I guess, because from the Bitcoin side, the impression I'm getting from many of the Bitcoin proponents, going to some of their meetups and just chatting to them, is that they are a lot more about, let's just, if we've got a system where money works really well, which the Bitcoin network is by far and away the most secure network for sending and receiving and storing money and recording money, because it's got the most proof of work. We should essentially keep that as it is, because that's money. That's all you need for money, is those three things. As long as you can send it, you can receive it, you can store it, that's great. That's it. The moment you add complexity to that system and try and go further than that system goes on that layer, you drastically increase your threat model and your risk, and also you take a lot of people out of the ecosystem that can host the ledger themselves. So at the moment, all you need is a $20 computer and an internet connection, and you can host a Bitcoin node. It's very, very low resource, and you can have a complete copy of the ledger there. So if you're in an African village somewhere, you get your hand on some old hardware, you host a node. If you're somewhere in Eastern Russia, you can host a node. Everyone can essentially be a part of the network, and it works. Like it's send, receive, and store. And unless, of course, the Russian network gets shut out from everyone else, and then that's a different story. So I guess what I'm seeing from their side is that they're saying everything else we should probably build as a layer 2. We can anchor it in that Bitcoin blockchain, because that's really secure and that's great. But it should really just be an anchor. It should just hash there every now and then, because that's the most secure place in the world to hash stuff and store stuff. And we also need to use the Bitcoin units on there, because it's kind of like the money of the internet. That's what most people are using. Yeah, so their philosophy is a lot more about building solutions on top that just reference the chain, and it seems like the other guys are saying, well, no, let's expand this, like a great foundation there, but we can essentially increase the pipe size and give it some more functionality and do a whole bunch of other things directly there at the coalface.
Now, from the Bitcoin Cash meetup, it was one of the Bitcoin.com developers who was giving the talk. I think he was calling in from America on that one. But yeah, he was saying that they actually initially tried, the first sort of tokens were tried on Bitcoin. So Ethereum started by being built on top of Bitcoin, but then having seen that, I think it was Vitalik and co sort of trying to do stuff there, they actually limited Bitcoin to prevent that happening. So there's all kinds of infighting in the community and all sorts of things there.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's weird because you want sound money.
Yeah.
But then, some people will say, oh, well, Lightning isn't sound money. That's only sound when it's confirmed on the, or however it works. And there are all kinds of conspiracy theories and all kinds of things about that. Don't need to go into that. And then you've got others who are just like, wow, let's do Craig Wright's vision. And it's bloody confusing.
It is. And I guess where I'm coming towards, it's funny because each month, you seem to get a new perspective and you seem to rethink things. And at least for this month, I feel like I'm going a lot more towards thinking that all these other networks can say they can do all these wonderful stuff and they can, they can have all these great dreams about all the amazing things they're going to accomplish and all the great things they're going to do on chain. But the reality is, for example, for Bitcoin Cash, that Bitcoin Core is doing 30 times the transaction volume than either of them. And they said, people would flock to them and they'd have all these people using them and they're just not. Ethereum, similar story. They're yes, a lot of projects are developing for them, but the projects are trying to do things that the network just simply can't do. And so they're having their issues as well. For me, in my mind, the more and more I think about it, the more I feel like maybe we are just trying to rush things a fair bit too much. You look at the internet, for example. The internet basically started in like the 60s and the 70s. That's when people started connecting computers together and sending data to each other and trying to do that at a bigger scale. It took 20 years to go from there to get networking to a point where it was secure enough and robust enough to begin building a wider World Wide Web.
And just trying to even get the standards and the protocols. I mean, back in the day. Anyway, sorry, I'm taking off your point. So it took 20 years.
To even get it to a point where people were comfortable hooking their computers together in a certain way. And only then did it really start hitting the point where consumers could begin using it. And that wasn't even money. And I guess one of the big things I took away from Alex's talk was that money has taken a really long time to evolve. And in the grand scheme of things, our last 10 years it's nothing really, to build an entirely new monetary system that's sound enough for the world to rely on. 10 years isn't enough. And it's likely it's actually going to probably take a lot longer than we think it's going to take to build a system that even does money well, let alone all the other stuff that we're hoping and dreaming that crypto will. And so, I've come away from that and a few other things I've been listening to and hearing, thinking maybe we have just rushed all this a little bit too much and maybe we should be focusing on getting the money thing right first.
Do you know what? That is actually what the Bitcoin Cash developer was saying about Bitcoin SV.
Yeah.
He was saying, he said that he thought it was a bit naive how fast they were trying to rush the growth.
Yeah.
When Bitcoin Cash were trying to grow from Bitcoin and then Bitcoin SV wanted to grow from that.
Yeah.
And both of them are all saying,
Because most tech people are dreamers, they look at this stuff and they instantly expand things in their head. And kind of go, oh, well, it could do this and it could do this. I'm sure the internet guys were doing that back in the 70s and the 80s when they were working on it. But this stuff takes a lot of time, and generally I feel like the most robust thing, the most proven thing will often win out in these kinds of circumstances. And I particularly think that's true with money. And so, yeah, I'm in this weird spot now where I've been a lot more about all these new different projects and all these exciting things that are happening. And I feel like me personally, I've neglected just Bitcoin a lot because it was the incumbent. It was the old thing, it was the standard. But there's a lot of really smart people involved in it who are now more than ever reiterating the fact that this stuff takes time. And if you want, as far as a secure, robust, well-used network goes, Bitcoin is still definitely incumbent. And it's, for me, I'm just finding it harder and harder to look at it and go, find anything that may take it over in the near future. I guess
in some ways we're in a very impatient society where we want things here and now.
Yeah.
We want things to be fast. And you'll probably, I'm sure some people will say, well, Bitcoin is just making excuses for being slow and not actually keeping up to date and becoming dinosaurs very quickly.
Yeah.
All three of these groups that I've come across seem to be like maximalists. It needs to be, everybody in the world needs to be using Bitcoin and then Lightning transactions so that we can do it quickly.
Yeah.
Or everyone in the world needs to be using Bitcoin Cash or nothing else. Or everybody needs to be using Bitcoin SV. And at the end of the day, I don't know, I feel like there is still room for many things. I mean, there is 186 currencies that the United Nations recognize.
Yeah.
There's plenty of currencies. There are hundreds and thousands of currencies now if you include virtual currencies. Most of them will die off, but there are still reasons why you might use specific ones, a privacy coins for certain things. So it all depends on what it's for.
Yeah.
And I mean, you can't run effective smart contracts on Bitcoin Core at the moment.
No.
And I don't think if you were wanting to make a really high volume one that doesn't cost users, you don't want to run it on Bitcoin SV.
No. Well, I mean, how many people are actually running smart contracts and using them in real business senses? I feel like we haven't even convinced people that any of this crypto stuff is good money yet.
We just need internet money. People just need to use it.
Yeah. And I guess the counterpoint to the fractionalizing viewpoint is, if we do really want internet money and we want it to have the characteristics we like, which is decentralization, at least a modicum of privacy, immutability, not owned by anyone, then we may only get one shot at this, because someone like a Facebook or a Google or some new company may come along with a centralized alternative, which is what JP Morgan have been doing this week, which is saying, hey, we got a crypto too, you should all use it. And it's really just reskinning the massive issues with our current banking system and trying to impose that on people under a new guise and make that money for the internet. So depending on who you talk to, some people will definitely say that we're shooting ourselves in the foot a lot by kind of diversifying
100%.
so far. When it makes more sense to kind of hone in on one system and say, okay, let's have this as the main part, and then let's kind of branch off this and build different parts to this. And it's hard to know, isn't it? Because like that shirt, people will always try and do their own thing, and generally there's things to learn from all the different projects as well. And I can guarantee you that the core guys are looking at the cash guys and the SV guys, and they're learning things from them and vice versa. So it's hard, but I guess overall you could say that Bitcoin and its couple of main forks are all doing pretty interesting stuff, because I mean, Lightning's definitely not the only thing that Bitcoin's doing. There's a few different privacy initiatives that they're building on top of it at the moment, and there's other stuff going on. And same thing with Cash and SV. It seems like there's a lot of new stuff that's coming out of those projects as well.
None of which I'm probably doing justice, but at the end of the day, I think there almost has to be the ideological point for a lot of people. I think the more people sort of take a look at what governments are doing and what people in power are doing with the money system, fundamentally, there has to be an ideological side of things. If we're like, oh, crypto can work with the government and permissions and all this stuff, it's almost naive as to the religion of what government is. I mean, it worships, some sort of mythical god of, the state, the flag. It doesn't exist. But at the end of the day, a lot of this is down to the institutions that for years have been trusted, quote unquote, with our finance have shown themselves repeatedly to not deserve that trust. And we have to trust that they're not printing billions and inflating by printing all of this nonsense money out of midair. We don't know how much is happening, and they have no trust. And also, if these 12 people, like the Federal Reserve meet, decide what they're going to set, and manipulate the markets at. And then people that they know can trade off this. It's corruption from the very core. And systems that we have now attract corruption. Decentralization, that needs to be the key point for a lot of people, is that when we take away the power from organizations like that and decentralize it, so there isn't somebody who can really climb to the top unless you there are ways that you can break it, but we need to break that.
And that was the beauty of what Satoshi Nakamoto did with Bitcoin, wasn't it? Because not only did it create a system whereby money could be decentralized and could be validated using public key cryptography and hashing and all the algorithms and all the different things that go into a blockchain, time stamping and hashing. But then it stepped aside. Satoshi stepped aside and said, it's yours now, internet. We've got the mechanisms to come to consensus about decisions that need to be made to change things. You can fork it if you want, take it in your own direction. But it'll work, and it's robust. And we don't want a controller of this network, because that's what we've had with all our other financial systems, and it doesn't work. And so this system really is money for the commons. It's money how it should be. Money is it's a unit of exchange between people. And Alex in his talk was talking about another guy who I've forgotten his name. He's from Queensland here, near where we live, and he said that money is essentially crystallized life energy.
That guy from the Awakening podcast.
Yeah.
The video?
Yeah,
I saw that the other day.
Which I think was a brilliant explanation, because it really is. It's your blood, sweat, tears, effort, thought, energy, all boiled down to a unit of exchange. It represents a certain amount of energy and time and blah, blah, blah. And that crystallized life energy, you should not be told how much that is worth by a centralized entity. A centralized entity should not be able to print more of that crystallized life energy just because they choose to. It should be an instrument of the commons, just like water is an instrument. No one can. I mean, it's not as true now, because we do get supplied our water, and generally we pay it for rates and blah blah blah. But in water, really, it comes out of the sky. It's just something that's there. And same way that money should really just be a open source.
It's free of it's money that is free of corruption at the source. It's not created through some kind of, because there's nobody who has advanced knowledge of what's happening with it, as far as I'm aware.
Well, the rules are just set. That's it. All other units of exchange in our society, the rules aren't set there for everyone to see. There's a few men and women behind closed doors who make decisions every year about how much to print and who to give that money to before inflation, quote unquote, kicks in. And that means that what we do is worth a little bit less, or a lot less, every single year. And we don't have that with Bitcoin. Bitcoin, the rules are the rules. And that's it. There's no argument. It's just maths. There's no arguing with the rules.
And that's what matters with this, because there really has to be, maybe it's just a few more economic crashes and all that sort of thing. But at the end of the day, when PayPal or Mastercard or Visa can block my transaction because they don't agree with the person I'm sending money to, because of somebody else's decision on how I can spend my blood, sweat and tears and my money, If I can't send that to a publishing organization or an activist,
Yeah.
I'm not free to do what I want with my money, and that is pretty dangerous. Now, even if
It's not money, is it? It's not purely a unit of exchange that crystallizes your life force. It's something else too. Whether you call that a means of control, whether you call that manipulation, there's a bunch of names you could give to it, but there is something else. Like, you're not just transferring a unit of exchange, you're also transferring something else with it, or you're buying into something else by using that unit of exchange. And that's the problem.
And all you need to know is your private key. You memorize that, you travel across a border, you haven't taken any money with you.
Yep.
But you put that private key back in and you've moved millions.
Yep. Well, it really is internet money, isn't it? Because it can be anywhere in the world.
Yep.
Borders don't matter.
Yep.
You don't need to use any networks to transfer it from one jurisdiction to another. No one can shut your account off like banks currently can. You know, look at what happened with Venezuela. I think we covered it last episode that they had, was it gold held somewhere, or they had a certain amount of money that equated to that amount of gold, and they went to withdraw it, and the bank or the people they were storing it with, who were, I think, an English organisation, just said, nah, sorry, you can't have it.
And they were crying outrage, almost, fairly.
Yeah.
Equally, the same government in Venezuela was calling people who are using Bitcoin terrorists.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But the irony,
Well, it's just the problem tying money up with institutions and governments.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not where money should be.
Worth hedging your bets.
Yeah, it's just, and there's only 21 million of it. Like, talking about Bitcoin, I mean, I know there's others out there, but like, there's a fixed supply.
Let's say, for example, that the derivatives bubble of the trillions of risk that's in these random financial products that lots of us don't understand, just products based off other financial products.
Yep.
If these products, let's say there's a little bit of a pop in that bubble, as some people might call it, or the car industry in America, or the housing industry in Australia, or any of these areas, and let's say they all happen around about the same time, those currencies would be, well, the US dollars could be very slightly different, but people are not well off. And when you can't buy as much with your money, you would like to have had something that was worth just a little bit more than that.
Yeah.
And you don't have to have everything in there, but I think it is, worth it on ideological reasons. Not making much sense. Terrible for a podcaster, but yeah.
No, it's completely right. I think what you're saying is that it's not a sure bet, but it's a decent bet. Everything seems to be trending the right way. And like we were talking about at the top of the podcast, the people that are growing up these days, cryptocurrency for them is not a new thing. It's not something they'll be uncomfortable with. They'll be quite comfortable with it. And I think to them it's going to be quite attractive as well, because it is digital money. It makes a lot more sense in the context of their world. It's not these old institutions who are still operating like it's 30 years ago, and for them everything has a lot more friction. It's just internet native money, like Jack Dorsey. Is it Jack Dorsey?
Yeah.
Said on the Joe Rogan podcast. It is literally internet money.
Yeah, and I think everyone should really get behind that in a way.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, in a big way. Like, I think it is probably the most important thing for our generation. Like, if we can be the generation of people that gets money right after centuries of getting money wrong, and finally give money back to people, like have a money for the commons,
solve a fundamental problem with our society.
Yeah. Like, if that's what our generation's remembered for, holy crap, man! Like, that is. Like, instead of bombing countries and, or invading countries or whatever, like, if that's...
Just throw some Bitcoin at them.
If that's what our generation's remembered for, then that would be awesome. It comes back to the fact that we need to make sure we're using it. We need to make sure we're helping other people get on board, and we need to, just do our little bit to push things along.
It's so right for so many reasons, and it does matter.
Yeah.
Really does matter. So, yeah, pretty excited.
Buy Bitcoin. Do you know someone who might enjoy this? Please feel free to share the podcast with them.
You can find us at FOMO.show.
You can jump on our Telegram at FOMO.show/Telegram.
Follow us on Twitter at _FOMO_show.
You can find us at YouTube at FOMO.show/YouTube.
And I still haven't put any episodes up there recently because I still haven't got internet. Anyway, thanks so much for joining us. Wait, what was I saying? That's it for us here at the FOMO Show. If you enjoy the show, please feel free to give us a rating and do subscribe in your podcast app of choice or via our YouTube channel.
I'm Matt.
And I'm Joe.
And as always, remember,
no FOMO. Oh, there's a word that they have for the...
You have much chutzpah.
Chutzpah. That's we have the chutzpah.
Very, very much chutzpah.
Yes, they're like, consent of the government. You know what? 40% of people go out there. Let's just say there's no rules or anything in society, and then 40% of the people in this society suddenly say, okay, this is what the government is. This is who's leading it. This is what's happening.
Yep.
And the other 60% of people are like, we didn't vote for this. And they're like, well, we got the majority. It's like, majority of what? Like, yeah. Anyway.
And the guns.
but
I mean, consent of the government, it just as a complete aside, is such a myth.
If you're governed, it's not consent.
It's not consent, you know? You can't, like, it's like saying slaves are consenting to being slaves, you know? Like, they don't have a choice in the matter.
Mate. Well,
I didn't pop out of my mum's womb and raise my hand and say, I give consent. You know?
Oh,
that's a completely different...
Sorry.